So Starfield's been in early access for a few days now. It's going to release tonight at 5 p.m. Pacific time. We've waited a long time for this game. There's been a lot of hype built up for this game, and I intentionally don't pay attention to what a game might be. I just go in completely blind, take it for face value, and assess it from there. Now, I feel like a lot of the negativity out there is because people hyped it up to themselves and made it into something that it was never going to be. When you look online, you're gonna see a lot of people say that it's a bad game. Don't buy it. It's trash. It's garbage. Unplayable. Diablo 4 was better, which that was far from the truth. Diablo 4 is a terrible game. Just at its core fundamental value, it is just garbage. It's a grindy mess, and I think to compare that to a Bethesda game, it does not make sense to me. You're also going to see a handful of positive ones, most of which are Star Citizen players. But to me, I just feel like they're happy to have a space exploration game that's not been in development for like 12 years, 11 years, almost 12. People are acting like it's Cyberpunk 2077 all over again, and I don't understand it. So I'm coming in here with an unbiased review, talking about what is bad about the game, why it's bad, but also bringing up what is good. We'll try anyway. So I'm going to start with the elephant in the room as far as what is the worst thing in the game, and that's anything involving a ship. Whether that be ship building, ship exploration, combat, all of it isn't good. It's pretty bad, honestly. So we'll start with ship combat. Firstly, there's so much involved with flying a ship and ship combat that is reliant on your skills in the skill tree involving those things. So like maneuverability, targeting system, use of shields, use of specific weapon types, etc. Those kind of things. I can understand most. Why is maneuverability tethered to a skill in the skill tree? I'm sorry, if I'm driving a boat in space, I expect it to fly like a boat. But if I'm driving a small ship with big engine, I expect it to fly like a ship with a big engine that's small. Why is it like it shouldn't be reliant on me having better skills in a specific skill tree? Ship combat in general is pretty fucking bad. It's pretty much just a jousting fest until you can manage to get behind the enemy ship, and then once you're behind the enemy ship, it's back to jousting. It's not a good experience. Now on top of that, if you're facing any combat that involves more than 2 ships, it's not exactly doable until you have a bunch of ship combat skills unlocked. The nice thing about how Star Citizen has their system set up is it's reliant on player skill and the ship you're flying. So if you're good at flying a ship and you're flying a tiny little dogfighter, then it'll be better in combat than flying a big ass ship that's not as nimble, because the little tiny dogfighter is going to be able to fly circles around you. Also being able to take down systems because you're good at flying the ship. So in order to do the system targeting, you press a specific button, it goes into a different sort of mode, time slows down, you sit there like a fucking potato in space and shoot at the specific systems. So logically, you would think, okay, I have multiple enemies, I need to take down the things that will hurt me before focusing on anything else, right? So you would want to go and take out the guns on enemy ships to make the fight easier. Nope, because while you're doing that, you can't maneuver your fucking ship, and you just get blasted the entire time, and you blow up. So, like, system targeting is absolutely useless unless it's a single ship, maybe 2 ships there. Otherwise, you're just blowing up ships, which is kind of lame to me. I like the idea of boarding an enemy ship. I like the idea of taking their ship and selling it for scrap. The system targeting makes me mad. It is so poorly implemented. Missiles. You want to know how you evade things in the game? Boost. You just boost. Oh, missiles locked on me. Let me go fast. Steer the ship a little bit. What kind of evasive maneuver is... Have you heard of countermeasures? I feel like that would be way better, especially with how restrictive the movement and combat is in general in a ship. The default keybinds, like, in general in this game are terrible. For repairing your ship on keyboard, it's O. Does that make sense? I didn't think so. Your left hand's on WASD, W-A-S-D, and your right hand's on the mouse. I have to make... My fingers aren't a foot long, Bethesda. I have to walk a mile in order to repair my ship, apparently. Thankfully, I have an MMO mouse. It's not that big of a deal. I could just swap up the keybinds just as anyone else could, but this game has the worst default keybinds I've seen implemented ever. They are so terribly bad. Power management in the game is nice. I think having a system like that in a space exploration game with combat is a very good idea. You can delegate power to your weapons, your shield, your engines, and alter how the setup is. However, with how rigid the maneuvering and gameplay is with ship combat, it's not a good time. Holding Alt and then using A and D to toggle what I want to delegate power to, and then W and S to adjust that power, it makes sense. But what was nice about Star Citizen's setup is you can set up keybinds to just single key press. All right, all your power goes to engines. Single key press, all your power goes to shields. All your power goes to weapons. Like, I get they have it set up to where you can switch it between weapons, like lasers, ballistics, and missiles. But still, it would have been nice to have that option at least. Not everybody would have to use it, not everybody will use it, but it would be nice to have that option. It is incredibly disappointing not being able to low fly into atmosphere. That's people's biggest complaint, is not being able to fully explore the planet without it being instanced, but honestly, I expected it and I understand why. I mean, it at least makes it more accessible to lower quality systems. If you have an older Xbox, if you have a shittier computer, at least you're still able to play the game, right? So I can understand it. Doesn't upset me. Kind of would like to have some sort of low flying in the game, but with how terrible the flying is in the game, hard pass. I'm okay with it as is. Shipbuilding's, it's not terrible. It's not great. It's very modular, which is expected, and I don't see it being implemented in any other way. You just throw a bunch of parts together, and it looks like... I'll just say I'm not a fan of the ship design in this game. They look pretty bad. It's difficult to make it look good, but it is what it is. Like, at least you're able to customize and build your own ship, throw your own paints on it. It's not terrible. However, the experience of building a ship is frustrating beyond belief. That's a bit of an over-exaggeration, but let's say you put something in the wrong spot and you want to move it. So you pick up the item and you're like, all right, I need to move this up here or over here. Well, if you try to use your mouse, it'll end up being a mile away from what you're working on. And it's frustrating to actually get it to snap to the spot you're wanting to put it. So it's easier just to delete the item, go up to the spot that you want to put it onto, and then add the item again. Not the best implementation. It's not very good, but it's not terrible. Definitely be better. And I'm going to be saying that a lot. It's good, but, you know, now exploration, the biggest disappointment everybody has with the game, because what I said earlier, not being able to low fly in atmosphere, not being able to explore the entire planet's surface in one go, etc. It's better the way it is, mostly because the surface is so fucking empty. There's nothing to explore. And if there is, if it's worth going to explore, it has a point of interest marker on it. Otherwise, it's just empty terrain with plants, animals, and some minerals. maybe a small abandoned structure with garbage loot on it. They have a fast travel system implemented to where you can open up your scanner and look at a marker and then press E and or whatever button is on controller and you fast travel. Honestly, I'm glad they have that in there. I would rather a ground vehicle or something. That would be sick to have, but they don't. They just put fast travel markers throughout the entire surface of the planet. Most of what the exploration and surface of the planet is used for is just resources for your base building, crafting, stuff like that, which is kind of disappointing, but you also have free reign to build absolutely anywhere on the surface, which I think is great. Now, we'll talk about base building in a second, but I'm going to quickly touch base on space exploration and what it's like to level up those skills for your ship. You basically open up the map, go to whatever star system that you want to go to, and then hope that there's a hostile activity marker or something like that. That way you can go blow up ships. Not the best way to implement that, because you have to kill ships to get better at flying your ship and get better ship stuff, but it doesn't really give you much opportunity to do that at the very beginning. You will find abandoned ships that are currently out of commission and occupied by pirates, and you go through, kill them all, get some loot, be on your way. It's not great because it's pretty much fast travel to anything that's happening or anything worth looking at or any part of the game, but it's not terrible, I guess. There's still plenty to do, plenty to explore. As you're exploring, you're trying to find a good spot to put a base, which is kind of exciting. It's fun. I always like base building in games, and the base building isn't that bad. Again, however, it could be way better. It honestly is basically Fallout 4 base building copy pasted to Starfield with a new skin, and that's not good. Their UI for base building is okay for controller, but when you're doing keyboard and mouse, it's a nightmare. It's not fun. There should be snapping to walls. That way you can line things up properly inside your base. You can snap the chunks to each other, but you can't snap like workbenches and stuff to walls, which is incredibly frustrating because the rotation is assigned to the left and right mouse button. Why would you ever do that? And it's not notched. It's not like, oh, here's this orientation, and then you could like click a button to like freely rotate it. No. It's just free rotation, but like as is most things with keyboard and mouse, it's all or nothing. So you're sitting there clicking back and forth, and the thing is like going like this, and you can't get lined up properly. I'm not surprised Bethesda didn't like try to innovate anything that they've already developed. They just wanted to reuse it, recycle it, you know, which is disappointing. And the modding community is definitely going to be the saving grace for this game. I mentioned that they just recycle what they have. Well, crafting system is pretty much Fallout 4 reskinned. Same thing. It's just not much to talk about in that regard. The whole setup for the game, honestly, is just a Bethesda reskin, which they do with most Bethesda games, whether it be Elder Scrolls, Fallout, and now their new IP. It's just main storyline with some factions that you can join up and side quests in between. Not a bad setup for a game, but again, they're not innovating anything that they've done. Movement in the game is a mixed bag. It's not bad, but like combat is pretty rudimentary if you ask me. Like there's no corner peeking, there's no sliding, there's just try to hit your crits and take as little damage as possible by tucking behind walls, which it's alright. You mostly rely on environment and mods on your guns to get leverage in a fight, but it's alright. Not great, could be better, just like everything else. Low gravity movement is a little goofy in this game. You jump up, let's say you're going, and you jump, and you stop pushing forward. You're just gonna stop and drop. So you get the proper movement as long as you're pushing forward. But in that situation, you would have momentum. So that's not how it would work. And we don't have EVA systems animated onto our person unless we have a pack that has a boost system on it. So why not make that stop thing? Like if you really wanted that in the game, make it only apply when we have a boost pack, then it would make sense. Zero gravity, though, I've actually been pretty impressed with, and I'm enjoying quite a lot. I found an abandoned armored freight ship, I boarded it, there was pirates on it, and the gravity was turning on and off. That made for interesting gameplay. For example, the explosive barrels or tanks or whatever that you find occasionally that you should blow up, well, you can't pick them up. You can't throw them, you can't do anything with them. But what you can do in a zero gravity situation is bump into them and make it launch across the room over to the enemies, shoot it and blow it up. That's pretty satisfying. Or, let's say you have an enemy down a hallway and they keep hiding behind the corner, so you just, when gravity's off, huck a mine out, it just floats off over towards them, and when the gravity turns back on, it either lands in their walking path or floats right to them and blows up. Pretty satisfying. When you shoot a gun in zero gravity, it kicks you back. That was a fun little aspect that they put into zero gravity that I was pleasantly surprised and happy with. The story, it's not bad. It's not great, but it's enough to drive you to explore. It's enough to motivate you to further progress the story. It piques your curiosity. It's not terrible, but it's not the best story I've experienced in a game. Granted, I haven't finished it because I just haven't had the time and been dealing with the frustrations that are in the game. Side quests are Bethesda side quests. They're exactly what you would expect them to be. Go grab this thing for me. Go flip some switches for me. Collect these things for me and get back to me later once you give them to me. Come back? Alright, sick. I needed you to go grab another thing for me. Typical Bethesda side quests, nothing crazy interesting, and it's just... some are okay. Most are pretty meh. Most side quests are procured by being a nosy Nancy. You walk through an area, someone happens to say something, or just complain about their life into the void, and then you get, oh, side quest, go talk to this person, which I feel like it's a nice flavor to add to a game's side quest system, but I don't like that that's where the majority of your side quests come from. Some are found through exploration. I landed on the surface of the moon, saw another ship land, so I was like, oh, sick, I'm gonna go steal that. Turns out they were smugglers, they thought I was the courier, they gave me a package. I decided to kill them all. I tried to take a ship, but the game wouldn't let me take that specific ship. Apparently you can only steal some ships, not all ships. Why? If you kill everybody in the ship, you should just be able to take it. Regardless. That being said, you have to level up a skill in order to unlock the ability to fly bigger and better ships. Which is fine, I guess. A little annoying, because you level that up by destroying other ships, which I already explained is kind of frustrating to go out and do to begin with. Dialogue is... most of the time it's pretty decent. Some of the time the voice acting is not very good. I'm not a fan of how they have persuasion implemented. You basically get dialogue options that have a value next to it, and then you have to add up those values to hit a certain quantity in order to pass the persuasion check. Each dialogue option has a chance to pass, and is color-coded as to like how likely it is to pass, if that actually worked. For me, every time I go to do the persuasion thing, it's more so whether I'm clicking the correct dialogue option that feels the most suitable for the conversation I'm having. So the numbers, the likelihood that you're able to pass certain persuasion things, that all feels irrelevant, so I'm not even putting anything into persuasion on my skill tree. It just feels arbitrary and useless, and I don't even know why it's in the game, honestly. As for the bugs go, it's typical Bethesda stuff. NPCs do wacky stuff like fall through the floor, pop up next to you and start beating you with an axe. Or they start ascending into godhood and fly out of the atmosphere. It's Bethesda. We're conditioned to it, but we shouldn't be, but we are. Companions are dumber than a rock, as usual, with most games, especially Bethesda games. And even if they have skills allocated to being stealthy, they are not stealthy. I tried sneaking past a gun thing, and because I walked too close to it, my companion walked too close to it, and they just opened fired on it. So much for being stealthy, bro. I'm still gonna put a decent amount of hours into it. I'm going to be modding it quite a lot, because that is going to be the saving grace of this game. Do I think the game is terrible? No. Do I think it's great? No. I'd say it's mediocre. It's right in the middle. If you like a Bethesda game, you'll enjoy it. Not much more to go off of that. Just gotta wait to see what the mod community has to offer, and hopefully Bethesda does some patchwork on the bad things in the game. So like I've been saying throughout the entire video, it's good, but still disappointing.